really it comes down to price range and what is the plan of the clients? Is it an investment? Are they going to move into it? Are they buying it for their kids? Right, there's so many different avenues you can go down. And so what's the requirement? Is it a studio or a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom?
Think about this, guys. If there's no projects being sold this year, that means we're going to have a gap of like 3-4 years, because it takes 3 or 4 years of these projects to be built, at which we're going to struggle. We have so many people coming into Canada, we're going to have a housing shortage again. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the DC Talks podcast. This is episode 102. I'm your host, David Chinelli, and today we have an amazing guest. And, I think you're an amazing guest.
Thank you. You're pumping my tires here. All right. I'm excited. No, it's good to be here.
So we have Mr. Jeff Slightum. So I guess you and your brother run our company.
That's correct.
And you started from your grandparents, right?
It started my grandfather and my father started in 65. They bought a little business of 13 agents that quickly went to 6. And when they took it over, and the rest has been history. So my father ran the business till, I guess, the mid-90s when my brother stepped in and was there for about 10 years. And I showed up in 2004.
Love it.
Yeah.
Has it always been a Royal LePage? So you guys are Royal LePage signature, in case you didn't know. But
that's right.
But has it always been Royal LePage?
No, good question. A good point. We were an independent Slightum Real Estate since 1965 till 2000.
Wow.
And so we decided, in order to grow the brand, grow the business, rather, we needed to align ourselves with the brand. And so we met with all the companies that you see out there, all the major brand names, and we felt our culture aligned really well with Royal LePage.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, thanks.
I love the culture of Royal LePage is different than any other ones. And we talked about your brother all the time. And we get recruited as agents all the time. I always go back and he knows all the stories. Like, yeah, this one has a good story about this, and he'll know because you guys have always done the research of everything else, where everybody stands.
We're always we're always trying to improve ourselves, improve our business, and just being a Canadian company spoke volumes to us. Mm-hmm. And so we just, again, and being a local business to the community, and we want to be, local to Canada, and develop that network throughout the whole country. So it's been great.
The good thing I liked when I talked to Chris before. Before you guys were brought on, you both had, I don't know if you're the same way, you had to get your license and work somewhere else first.
We did. We had to go screw up somebody else's business.
I love that.
Right? It was really good. So very, very stringent rules. So we had to go out and for 2 years, we had to go out and sell real estate. You're not just going to show up at the family business and assume some managerial role without getting out and digging in the trenches, right?
I love that. So who did you work with?
Great question. Funny enough, the Royal LePage corporate office. So not a franchise of Royal LePage. Royal LePage has a few corporate stores. So I went and worked at a corporate office under a great manager, Diane Usher. She's not with Royal LePage anymore, but she was fantastic and made some great friends there and sold a bit of real estate and got my hands dirty. And then in a couple of years, I moved over to the family business.
I think that's huge for generational wealth. People know that as well. Like if you want to build something for your kids, and I talk about my kids all the time, like if you want to be a realtor, they don't want to be. Not yet. But I'm saying, well, come work, right? You have to do this. And that's one of the reasons why I knew I didn't want to, I never wanted to be a hairdresser like my dad was.
No.
And so it's like, yeah, but it's funny, but I like that. It was getting your hands dirty.
Elsewhere. You go see how other people do it, right? And my brother went through the same experience as he mentioned to you. And you learn, and you're able to bring things. You take the best of what you've learned and bring it to your own business. Right?
I love it. I love it. And bring a different dynamic. Then you
Absolutely.
come to business. Yeah.
Absolutely.
See, they do a little different here. We a little different here.
Exactly.
So recently, now you've been our pre-construction manager for how long? 3 years?
That's a good question. I've lost count. So
Yeah.
it's been at least 3 to 5 years now, I would say. And prior to that, I was also the pre-con guy. And then we brought somebody in and they moved on. And I took the reins back in hand and been there ever since.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So if you don't know, so what pre-construction is we'll do a quick. Pre-construction is Jeff is managing, builders will have like a new project and they will allot a certain amount of sales to agents as well. And they end up brokerages, and we are preferred with a lot of.
We are most of them, if not all of them.
Yeah. We have a preferred. So what they do is they'll, for a platinum like we are, they'll allot a certain amount of units and say, this is your lot, sell these. And then if you sell these later on, maybe if there's more, because you keep selling more and more, you get to these levels of status.
Exactly.
And pre-construction just basically means that it is before it's built. They'll have a project. So it'll start from grassroots. Once they get mostly the okay to start selling, you are buying things from a plan, which for a future project.
That's right. You're buying off a sheet of paper. You're looking at the plan. You like the exposure. You like the floor. In most cases, it's a lower high-rise building, a condominium. You're going to buy, you purchase right off a plan. And so the goal, the way, and this is what makes our real estate market very secure. These developers can and will not build unless they have sold a certain percentage of the building. They don't acquire their financing unless a certain percentage of the building is sold, and that number is in around 75 to 80%. And so when they acquire, when they've sold that many units, then of course they put the shovel in the ground. So it makes it a very secure project, and they won't build it unless they get their financing. And again, clients' deposits are very secure. They're held in a lawyer's trust account. And if the building, for whatever reason, doesn't go forward, the funds are returned to the client.
Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah.
So, and we work with, let's say we, as Royal LePage
Yes,
Signature,
of course.
most of like reputable builders, right? And that's why if I was talking to a friend of mine, Kelly, the other day, we brought her into Royal LePage Signature. We
Excellent.
talked about you, and we said, like, listen, we don't just pass on any projects. You vet through the
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We
you vet all
do
the
our
builders.
very best to vet every project. We've got a great relationship with many builders. I can say with the thousands of units we've sold, we've really only a handful that have had any issue with one developer. And it was the one issue we've had was a developer had a great track record, and there was a shift in the market and they were overextended, right? And so luckily, of course, all our clients' money is very secure. We made sure we're not going with developers who, because there are developers, mainly low rise, where your deposit is written to the developer. And so those you want to really make sure you do your due diligence and make sure they're well-established business
Right.
before
That's
you
pretty cool.
make that kind of investment.
And so just to let people know, how does the process for pre-construction work, right? So like, what is the whole from start to beginning, and how do you get involved?
Great question. So from a client's perspective, you want to talk to your Royal LePage Signature Platinum agent, and you want to talk to your agent who has great access and great knowledge to what really pre-con is all about, as you explained, and who has a relationship and who can talk to and educate you on many different projects. I wouldn't necessarily focus on just one. You want to be able to compare one to another. And there are projects popping up all across this great city of ours, from, if you can go as far as Oshawa, as far north as Barrie, and then as far west as, say, Milton. And if you want, you can even go to London. So we have access to projects all over the place. But again, there are so many different avenues. Everyone has different ideas on what investing in real estate looks like. And a lot of people say, well, I saw this new condo down the street from where I live. That seems very interesting to me. Well, that client knows and understands the neighborhood. And so in that case, yeah, that would make a lot of sense in terms of the management of the unit, the renting it out. You don't have to drive very far. You're not driving from Toronto to London or wherever else in terms of finding that investment. And then, of course, it not only comes to location, cost, and the big part of it, of course, is the developer, the reputation of the developer, which we just chatted about, right? That the relationship with the developer now is more important than ever, because the quality of the product, the delivery of the product, inevitably there may be some deficiencies when you're taking that delivery. How is that handled? How is that service? Because the best service comes when there is a problem. How is that rectified? And inevitably, when you're building a massive, hundreds of units, you're going to run into a few chips and things like that in the paint. How is that fixed? How is that rectified for you? And a lot of developers handle that in very, very well. They have people on site to come by and fix it quickly. Other developers may not operate like that. So again, it's important to know, and it's important to know who you're talking to has and understands who they're working with.
So like you mentioned before, okay, my neighbor, I walk in and I say, okay, Jeff, I found a project. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the process like? How do I go to buy this unit? I like this project. It's a Tridel building.
Yeah.
What's the process?
Great question. So you're going to take your client, you're going to walk them across what they call the threshold. You're going to introduce them to the project, introduce them to the sales team. We have a great relationship. Our relationship really starts with the sales teams with all these developers. And so we'll set up that appointment for you. So you go in, it's a warm meeting. It's a very welcoming meeting. You'll introduce them to the sales team, and they really take it from there. You're, as the realtor, you're there to ask questions and to say, hey, what maybe promotions are on right now, what kind of benefits that can be provided to the client. Is there any complimentary parking or locker or kind of preferred discounts? Who knows, right? And so you're able to assist them with pointed questions.
And they will ask you guys
Yeah.
questions. I mean, like, are you looking for a 1-bedroom, 1 or 2-bedroom, like floor plans, or like height and those kinds of things? And what they'll do is they'll show you, like, when you walk into these buildings, and
Yes.
sometimes they'll have a floor, like a 3D floor plan over here.
will.
They'll like a model what it'll look like. And along the walls I've seen before, or brochures, they'll show you the floor plan. So if you're looking for a 1-bedroom, you're looking for this, so you're looking for a studio, they will have all this, and then have some certain price points. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And it comes down to price range and what is the plan of the clients? Is it an investment? Are they going to move into it? Are they buying it for their kids? Right? There's so many different avenues you can go down. And so what's the requirement? Is it a studio, or like you said, a studio, or a 1-bedroom, or 2-bedroom? And so it really depends what the overall use and purpose of the unit is.
So you've selected a unit, right?
Yes.
You've paid for it. A lot of times so also the difference of the pre-construction is they have a payment structure. And usually it's what, $5,000 to $10,000 on signing.
On signing.
And what happens at that point, guys, is that you'll get an agreement. And
Yes.
you have a 10-day cooling down period.
You do.
And you were supposed to bring this to your lawyer.
You are.
Yes.
Highly recommend.
I
you
don't
bring it to
understand
your
when
lawyer.
people, and Sam brought up this the other day, which is a new law, because about pricing, which is now they've added can you explain the new law about that the builder can now increase the price if they like to?
It's always in the fine print of the contract.
Of course.
It's where
Which we always miss unless a lawyer does this on a daily basis. They are looking for things for this. So there are certain things they're looking for to protect you. One of them is capping levies, which is like things, but this is something else Sam brought up to our attention.
That's right. Well, one thing it's interesting with the pandemic and the issues with the supply chains was the issue. They couldn't get, say, drywall here. So all of a sudden the cost to get drywall into a project went up drastically. So all of a sudden the margins for the developers just got crushed. So they couldn't afford to build it anymore. So they had to go back, in some cases, they had to go back to clients and say, hey, if you want to continue to own this building, we need to increase the pricing. And there is a threshold within that, in the fine print, that they can increase it by a certain percentage.
Right. And there's some developers who won't cap that. They'll just say, well, we can increase whatever we want.
There is a limit. So there are laws around it. However, if they do exceed, the client does have the right to hand the keys back.
Right.
Let's say, or future keys back, or
Future
hand
keys
the
back.
contract.
That's right,
Hand the,
right.
hand the contract and get their deposit back, of course.
Yeah. So which I thought that was pretty
It
interesting.
is very interesting.
Yeah. So since you've been starting with pre-construction,
Yes.
right, has, things changed with developers and how structures of payments, like what have you noticed the biggest change recently?
It's a great point. So the big competitive edge that developers have over resale, I would say, is the deposit structure. So they do their very best to stretch out that deposit structure over the life cycle of the development of the construction. So in most cases, developers want 5 to 10% in the first year, and then the last, say, 10% is stretched out over the last 2 years of the construction cycle.
Unless you're Tridel.
Unless you're Tridel.
They ask for 20% up in the first year.
Basically in their first year. I'd say in the first 18 months, you've got to have your 20%, and they're very stringent on their approvals, right? So you've got to go ahead and get that mortgage approval.
Well, I was saying this before. When I was first got into this about 9 years ago, like we were buying pre-construction, we have some, and the approvals weren't the same as they are now.
No.
So you basically can go walk into a bank and like say, I need a pre-approval. Like they would just literally just write something, and they would never actually check, and you would get this fake pre-approval. I would call it fake, even though it was from a bank. And you'd bring it to the builder, and they would bring it back to their bank and say, okay, these guys are
checks a box.
Checks the box. It's like pre-approved. But now a lot of them are asking to get a real approval.
They are. Tridel is very stringent on having a formal approval from a tier 1 bank. And that's all they'll take. They will not take approval from a mortgage broker, a B lender. They need a tier 1 bank. Some developers will bend. Some are more flexible than others. But when there's more flexible, there's more risk involved.
Of course.
With that project. With that project.
With that
right?
project, yeah.
You got it.
So we O and I were just going through the Urbanation Report as one of the podcasts we had, which
Excellent.
is now, and this airs will be a couple of weeks earlier. And when Sean Hildebrand came, he mentioned that there's only 600 condos, I think, sold like this
in the last quarter, very, very few units were sold this year in general. I think it's it's down by, gosh, almost 60% in sales, right? It's a massive number, which arguably I would say we're going to pay for in the next, I'm going to say it's going to take about 3 years for the pre-con market really to take that major swing in terms of the busyness that we saw throughout the past few years. It's going to take time to recover. There's so many units being delivered right now. We had about 26,000 new units were delivered this year.
Delivered means, guys, that the construction is finished and you actually get the keys. Either you
And
rent them out or move in.
And that you're putting a mortgage on that property, right? And so next year will be a record year. They're saying there's going to be another 30,000 units completed next year. And the condo starts, meaning, construction starting, will be an all-time low. And so if you figure it's going to, and then after next year, I think it drops quite substantially, maybe about 15 to 20,000 units to deliver. And after that, it drops way down to under 10,000 units. And so when you're not selling units, as we discussed before, they're not going to build them, right? They've got to hit those
4 years or something. Like your brother and I were talking about this. So he was saying this on our live last day.
Yeah.
It was like, think about this, guys. If there's no projects being sold this year, that means we're going to have a gap of like 3-4 years, because it takes 3 or 4 years of these projects to be built.
Exactly.
Which we're going to struggle. We have so many people coming into Canada. We're going to have a housing shortage again, that gap.
We will. It's going to take time. It's going to take 3 to 4 years to get there.
Yeah.
But because of the number of deliveries that are happening as we speak, we're saying there's a lot of assignments. There's a lot of resale condos right now. The condo's almost that bad. Oh no, not a condo, right? Yeah. But the opportunity, again, it's having that vision, the opportunity to really see that in about 5 years to 6 years time, we'll be in that same issue we had before, where we just don't have enough.
No. And I think the biggest issues, you would think you agree with this, is the reason why we're having a problem with pre-sale is right now is that when these guys are getting their keys, what they had paid for these are now the bank is going in, they're doing evaluation. They're coming in, the assessment is much lower than what they had paid.
That's correct.
So it's deterring people from wanting to buy pre-construction, would you say? And that's one of the reasons why now developers are not coming with projects, because they can't make ends meet, because there's no market for it.
It's the uncertainty.
Okay.
People, it's what is the actual value of a condo unit?
Yeah.
Right? There is great value to be had out there. Like from an investor standpoint, there are some great buys in the market, but you've got to have that toe in the water, so to speak. And if you don't have that toe in the water to kind of say, hey, Dave, what's happening out there, right? Can you keep me informed? I'm looking for, a good investment, a good buy. Unless if you're not having those conversations, when you see that opportunity present itself, you don't know if it's an opportunity or not, right? So this is why it's so important right now in the market. Primarily on the resale side, I would say the assignment side, there's some great opportunities.
Yeah, we were just talking about this one where a friend of ours at the brokerage, she actually was on the show too. She had a sale, and it's almost $200,000 less than her client paid. And I said, so Jeff, if my buyer, so I was talking to Lisa about this too, if my buyer wants to come in and purchase this property, who's eating that extra $200,000?
Exactly.
And that's
the
buyer.
On an assignment sale, that's exactly it, right? So there are clients now who bought these units 3-4 years ago that are now taking possession and don't want the unit for whatever reason, and say, look, I'm not going to close on this. To avoid any issues with the developer, they are selling their units, as you mentioned, in this case, $200,000 less than what they paid for it. And so it's the original purchaser who bought the unit from the developer who has to cover that shortfall.
So the other question I was saying, which is not even pre-con, but I was saying, think about that. We had a problem getting construction trades into our houses. And remember how, during the pandemic, things going up. And after next year, we're 30,000 units coming to the market. Are you thinking there's going to be maybe a resurgence for people coming now to work, having maybe an influx, not influx, but maybe a supply of now tradespeople looking to do renovations, probably at a good price?
Absolutely. And this is,
that's
the
also
trickle down
market.
effect, the domino effect of this is huge, especially for the job market. The trade, we're trades who've been, basically pedal to the metal the last, probably 8 years. And then in about 3 years' time, and especially after next year, there are 30,000 condos being delivered. And then the following year, maybe 20. Well, that's 10,000 units that are not being built anymore. And then after that, it drops down to 10 or less than 10.
Yeah.
Well, that's 20,000 units. There's drywallers, you name
electricians,
plumbers, right?
HVAC,
everything, everything, right? So that all of a sudden so absolutely, there's going to be a lull in employment, which affects everybody, right? In terms of that's such a massive part of our job market.
Yeah.
Right. So over the long, it'll be interesting how it all comes out in the wash because all of a sudden, but all those people who now have to find something else to do.
But
right?
question for you,
Yeah.
then. Wonder if the trade, so first of all, I think selling right now we talked before is more the low rise.
Yes.
And low rise includes like anything under 6 stories, I guess. Right?
6 stories, townhomes,
townhomes like that.
Detached, sure.
Could you now see them, now the developers switching to those more of the low rise and maybe to fill the gap in that way?
Absolutely. So now more than ever, we're seeing majority of low-rise developers, those developers like Mattamy who build like low-rise townhomes, those massive subdivisions, wouldn't necessarily work with realtors before. And now they're cooperating more than ever. So they're really trying to capture our eyes and our ears and to bring clients to them. And because our market for the low-rise product has been so limited, deals are getting done. So there's some great opportunities. And a big machine like Mattamy, as an example, they have to keep their trades working all the time. Yeah. Recently, they're the only company launching high-rise product right now because they need to keep that machine that they have working. They have massive, I mean, I couldn't tell you how many people they employ, but their trades, they've got to keep them busy. It costs them too much money to let somebody go because they're not busy and then to go out and rehire all over again.
Oh, then you have to retrain them. You
Retrain
have to,
everything.
It's such a pain in the
They've
ass.
got everybody in their systems. They've got everybody in their funnel. So they've got to keep that machine going. And so they're doing everything they can to sell product.
Oh, it makes sense. Yeah. So that's where we see the trades coming. So where are spots you're seeing right now in the lower rise? That's
Great. Well, Mattamy, you're going to see there's
those are companies, but do they have a certain area, geographic areas?
Like Mattamy's product out in the Milton area. They've got product out in the Durham
that's
region.
all they've done. They've built I think they built all of Milton.
Oh, they literally have. They have high rise coming now to Milton, mid rise, and then their low rise stuff. Their towns and detached nonstop.
Yeah.
Nonstop. And the same goes for Aspen Ridge, another big home developer. They're doing a lot of stuff. Seton Village out in Durham, it's massive. Massive.
And do you think they're going to give actually more incentives? You think now? Like you touched on earlier. Like, do you think the incentives are changing now? The first thing Jeff talked about here was I want to touch on this.
Yeah.
Then we'll talk about the incentives.
Sure.
I just thought of this.
Yeah.
So Mattamy used to not work with us, which means you could draw your realtor in and they would never pay us. It's like fine, which is fine. You might have to pay your realtor on the side.
Yeah.
But now that means cooperating. But if you walked into a property and you just walked to a sales rep, and this always happens, and they're like, and they are cooperating agents. Well, you can say I don't have an agent. They don't drop so we get 3 or 4%. They don't drop the price. They're like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So you might as well get a realtor. It doesn't cost you any different, believe it or not. And they were probably saving you and checking you out. So make sure, that's why even if they're not cooperating, bring an agent with you because you're not paying less to not work with an agent.
That's exactly it.
But now there's more incentives. We're saying before, like you were talking about for free parking. There's maybe like I heard of lockers have been thrown in a lot.
Lockers an easy one. Yeah.
What about I've heard internet has sometimes been for a couple of years.
Yeah, they'll have a bulk deal with Rogers or Bell or something where they'll supply free internet and cable for a couple of years. Rental guarantees. So say the average rent in Toronto is about $4 a foot right now. They'll rent certain pockets, say downtown Toronto, they'll rental guarantee at $7 a square foot or something like that, just to say, well, we know rents are going to go up, so we're going to cover it off by $7 a square foot. Right. So they'll either do it, and every developer handles it differently. On the rental guarantee side, they'll either give you a large credit, so a rental guarantee for 1 or 2 years, and so they'll either give you a credit on closing or literally write you a check every single month.
Yeah. So
after you close, of course.
With all the projects you've seen tons of projects.
I've seen a lot of projects.
Yeah. Is there any handful that you would find that you're particularly excited about?
Great question. Absolutely. I would say we'll start in the east. There's a couple out in Pickering, Pickering City Center, 1515. It's called out in Pickering as well. They're 2 great buildings. I believe they're very well priced and are looking to do deals. So they've said, the developer said, bring your clients in. We'll work with them. Let's figure something out in terms of promotions and things like that. They're saying, we'll work with them. Right. Yeah. So there's some great opportunity. And getting closer to the city, there's a great project called Lansing Square at LSQ, which is a great one. It's right at what I love is 404 and Shepherd. They will be extending. I believe they're going to go with light rail from the Shepherd subway station across Shepherd. It's right near Victoria Park and Shepherd 404. Phenomenal location, high employment zone. So I think it's a great opportunity there. And then you're moving. I would say the core of the city, it's been a tougher market. So downtown pricing, it's been tough. because the pricing's been around $1,700-$1,800 a square foot.
Yeah.
And clients and even agents are having a tough time digesting that number unless the building is in high demand area, right? So there's some great projects.
Do you know the numbers of how many projects were canceled this year?
Ooh, I don't.
Yeah,
That is a great
I
question.
didn't.
It is kept very quiet. I know of less than I've heard of are probably less than a handful, slightly. They do tend to keep them quiet, or necessarily if the project's canceled, what I'm seeing a lot of these larger development companies are converting them to purpose-built rental.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
That's the other
Yeah.
that's the other angle.
Was there any names on those that you heard of that you were surprised at? The projects were canceled?
Canceled. One by Graybrook downtown surprised me a little bit. I knew it wasn't selling well, but
Which one was that?
that was
Because we have investments at
Centricity.
Graybrook. Okay.
Centricity.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
Centricity.
Yeah.
So, but they're a phenomenal company, extremely well run. They pivoted very quickly. They said, "Look, it's not the right time. We thought we could really make a go of this. It's not the right time." So they give all the developers, all the buyers their deposits back, and so we're going purpose-built rental,
Yeah.
right?
We had a meeting with Graybrook because we're investors and stuff.
Yeah.
Too. So we had the other day,
Yeah.
and I was giving Sasha a little bit of shit because of all the numbers afterwards, their information. I was,
Yeah.
but he had all the answers. It was good too. And I'm like, so their model, which is great. Like as investors, what happens? They pair them with really high end developers, and the developer doesn't have to come up with all of the funds. So instead of coming 100% of the funds to build a project, they only come up with 20. And then 80% of it is funded by us, which are investors. And we get to realize the gains. And what Graybrook does, it takes a little bit from this side, a little bit from that side. But developers like it because, they don't have to come up with 100%. They can do 5 projects for that same amount of money.
That's right. They've got
and
the
they're
cash.
and they're realizing 50% of the profits, so it makes sense for them. And they only work with high-end developers. Now, what Sasha was saying, which was interesting, they started buying projects in areas like now they're buying projects. So now they're just funding, they're waiting as well.
Exactly.
They're doing a great job, but now they're like it's pennies on the dollar at some of these places. Like, well, not full, like 50 cents on the dollar.
No,
So,
exactly.
like Yonge and Eglinton too, like areas like that, they're buying right now. So they're in the process right now of acquisition.
Yes.
Right. So it's something that really take a look on because don't think pre-construction is going away, guys.
No.
I wish that people are like, why would I ever buy a pre-con? I'm like, there's a time and a place, right? And
That's
it's
exactly
like,
it.
And when I bought all of mine, when we first were purchasing, it's changed. And I said the 3 things, the reason why I used to like pre-construction was, first off, you're buying from a plan. So a lot of times when I was purchasing, it was below the resale value because
It was.
when we first
The good
started,
old days.
the
The good old days.
The second was the deposit structure, which again, if you have 20% down, Jeff, unless they're with some developers, most of them will stretch out through the lifetime of
If you
the
don't
bill.
have, and that's why people go
Right.
a lot of directions. I want to own real estate. How do I do that as an investment opportunity? And that's what made new construction so attractive. You didn't need that 20% right now.
Right.
You've got to have 10. Oh, okay, I can do that. And then you got to save for the balance when you close.
Right.
And that's the kicker. You got to make sure you save. Right.
Right.
And in most cases, I'd say 99% of the time, people have been able to do that.
And the third thing was change is this mortgage law. So again, you have to have a mortgage. Now, in the beginning, I was pushing back, like, why get a mortgage? I actually like having the mortgage because they'll set a rate for you.
Yeah.
So what happened in the past, guys, and I know we have to wrap up soon, but one of the things I used to like in the past was that in the past, you can, like I said, go to RBC, but they would only guarantee you a mortgage for 24 months out.
That's right.
So now a lot of these developers are smart. They're saying, okay, well, our projects are going to take 4 to 5 years. They've partnered with banks, Schedule I banks, and they said, okay, if you go with this bank, we will gift you a mortgage for 48 months, whatever it is, and they will set a rate for the future value of the rate. Now,
It's usually Prime Plus, so it's usually Prime
course.
Plus. And they'll give you the better rate when you close.
well, when we bought Zora, for example, when I remember
Yeah.
looking at it, it was like 3.6%. I'm like, fine, I'll sign off on that. What a shitty rate. And when we came to fruition, it was like the rates were like 6%. I'm like, thank God I signed that.
No kidding.
So I think there's
It's hard
a
to
lot
see
of
at that time. You didn't think, this is it.
Exactly.
Great
exactly.
point.
Yeah, exactly. So again, these are actually things to protect you in the long run. So
Yeah.
Jeff, this has been a great conversation.
It's been awesome, buddy. This is really cool. There's so
Believe it
many
or not,
angles you can take here.
Oh, I know.
Absolutely.
And the one thing is Jeff was not scared to come and talk because there's been people bashing pre-con a lot.
Heavily. There has been some fallout on some sites that have been frustrating, and I feel bad for folks that had this vision of investing in real estate. A lot of times when you're buying a high-rise condominium as an investment, it's your first investment. And now obviously there has been a shift in the market, and there's been a couple of projects, as I mentioned, and I can count 5 of them maybe, that unfortunately it hasn't been a great experience for them. But as long with anything real estate, you've got to have that long-term vision. And the beauty of real estate and the beauty of our market here, it's very secure, right? You're going to get that deposit back. You're going to be able to allocate it somewhere else.
Right. And back to your brother saying, it's not time in the market, it's time in the market.
Time in the market. That's it. You got it. You got it.
I love
Long-term vision, right? Long-term vision.
And before we wrap up too, I
Yeah.
do want to say, and Jeff, you touched on those, like, guys, there are opportunities for assignment sales. All you're doing in an assignment sale is, in case you don't know what that is when somebody purchases a pre-construction, they have all the paperwork and they have a certain price. Before that actually gets built or goes into their name, they're able to sell the paperwork to you.
Yeah,
And a
sell the
lot of
contract.
times, sell the contract.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, again, it's at a discount. And again, you're, as the buyer, are benefiting from at a discount because A, you're getting a project which is below market value already.
Yes.
It's going to be easier to get a mortgage because the mortgage a lot of time is set of what the purchaser paid for, not what you're paying. So if you're paying less, you're going to have an easier time.
In some cases,
in theory, to get a mortgage.
The new thing is, I know we've got to wrap up, is blanket appraisals. And so the Royal Bank is one who is giving the entire condo building one value, right? So
It's amazing.
It's amazing. So no matter what, so if you paid $600,000 for your condo 3 years ago, and now it's only, if you had it individually appraised, it's only worth $500,000. Royal would say, no problem. We're going to appraise it at $600,000 because it's one blanket appraisal over the entire project.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it comes in, you can get your appraisal. Now, you still have to qualify for the mortgage, but the issue that a lot of people are running into is the appraisal, and you'll get it.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
So any parting words we're going for before you wrap up, Jeff?
Stick with real estate. Real estate is a long-term game. So I think there's some great opportunities out there. Talk to Dave. You know your stuff, and I give you a lot of credit. You do a lot of research on it. So you talked a lot about the opportunities and assignments. And if you are in the market, you are thinking about investing, there's some great opportunities out there, especially on the condominium side. Like I was saying, we said, condo is that bad word. It's not. Condo to me is opportunity right now.
And we talked about before that we think the market's really going to rebound in 2025. The condo market is already starting to creep up. It's not getting there yet. Now you can have an opportunity now buying at the bottom of the market.
Exactly.
It's, assignments or even it's one of those deals.
You can never time the market.
Exactly.
As much as we all love to, you can never time it.
You don't want to be the one, like your brother said, kicking yourself in 2 years. Like, why do we not buy 100 of these units?
Exactly.
Well, thanks again for coming to the studio.
It's great to be here.
Guys, as we always ask you, if you like this content, please like and share. You can listen to this anywhere that you listen to your podcast. If you want some spots, either watch it on YouTube. You can always go to my Instagram, and I have a link tree in my bio. It's David Veach, _realtor. And now you just click the link tree and you can listen to whatever you like there. But we want you to share this if you did like this content. And like we said, comment, do all that fun stuff. Until next time, we'll see you again.